The original dungeons got quite a lot of stick when it came out back in 2011. People wanted a real spiritual sequel to Dungeon Keeper 2, the big daddy of the genre, but rather than following the exact same footsteps, developer Realmforged tried something a bit different. Rather than fending off bands of heroes, you were actively luring them to attack your lair, setting down tasty treats and piles of treasure in order to tempt adventurers into position for you to drain their soul energy. Sequel Dungeons 2 drops all of that and sticks much closer to the traditional Dungeon Keeper formula, and it's much the better game for it. The main problem with Dungeon's premise was that you were always in a passive position, twiddling your thumbs and waiting for something to happen. Admiring your perfect dungeon home is fun up to a point, but Dungeons 2 understands that evil overlords need to keep themselves busy. Hence the addition of a new Overland map, a domain of goodly knights and happy bunnies that it's your job to conquer and enslave. Rather than stewing away in your dungeon, you've now got specific targets to aim for. Hire some orcs and trolls and you can drop them into your dungeon's exit portal, which will send them up to the surface. Here control switches to simple RTS basics, removing your omnipotent gauntlet of dominance and letting you group together units, activate certain unique abilities, and directly control your forces across the map. Dungeons 2's Overland RTS combat won't be rivaling StarCraft anytime soon, but it doesn't really need to. It's there to give you both a goal to work towards and another plate to spin, and it does a fine job of both. The best missions in the solo campaign have multiple objectives, which require you to keep an eye out both on your dungeon exploration and your potential surface conquests. You might for instance be tasked with intercepting overland trade convoys while still maintaining an efficient base defence with guard posts and deadly traps. Generally it's a smooth transition between these two areas, but there is one annoyance. You can't group select your units while underground, so to get your troops to head to a specific area you have to plonk down a summoning flag, which beckons every single one of your troops. This can be annoying if you want certain units to continue working, as you'll have to pick them up manually and put them back where they were. When you're constantly switching between overland and underground, this can be a bit of a hassle. If you've played a dungeon management sim before, you'll know exactly how the base building plays out. You carve rooms out of the surrounding stone with your overlord's floating hand, and then paint room tiles across the floor to mark out particular zones. Each room type is vital to a functioning dungeon, and as your population grows, you'll need to continually expand, creating larger breweries to keep your orcs drunk and happy, or grander treasuries to store your hard-earned gold. Each unit has a set of needs and desires that you'll need to fulfill, or else they'll start pilfering gold or slacking off on guard duty. You do have a stack of utility spells to help you control your troops, and you have free reign to set up trapped entrance halls or heavily guarded kill zones in areas that are vulnerable to invaders. There's nothing particularly remarkable or innovative here, but it is all very well polished and enjoyable. The campaign itself, while perhaps a little on the easy side, does a great job of gradually introducing you to the finer points of the game. Your dungeon master, the ultimate evil, used to be a big, lumbering juggernaut who could destroy whole armies with one swing of his sword, but a band of heroes from the good races joined together to cast a spell that sucked his life force out of his armour, leaving him as a formless face of evil a la Sauron. He's out for revenge, but he's now got to rely on his minions to do the heavy lifting. The tale is told by a slightly chippy narrator who guides you through your various objectives, sarcastically pointing out your deficiencies when you lose a mission critical unit, and making roughly 8 billion pop culture references along the way. The voice actor does a really great job of sounding both exasperated and obsequious, but the jokes themselves run the gauntlet between actually amusing and lazy reference humour, perhaps a little too closely for my liking. One of the antagonists, for example, is a wizard called Gandaldor who runs a magical school called Sprogfarts and arrives precisely when he means to. That tells you all you need to know. General presentation is fairly impressive. There's definitely been a concerted effort since the first game to make things feel more Dungeon Keeper. There are several little touches like the way your gauntlet cursor can now be used to slap lazy minions, and the art style and tone feels far more cohesive than it did in the previous game. Creature designs are expressive and charming, and while there's no XCOM style attachment to your troops, some of them can earn medals and titles over time, as they level up and become stronger. It's a bit of a shame then that they don't carry over between levels. Once you're done with the single player campaign, which should take around 10 to 15 hours to complete, you've got a suite of multiplayer and skirmish options to keep you busy. There's basic deathmatch modes, a King of the Hill mode which tasks you with holding onto a certain area of the map, and a domination mode which rewards totally obliterating your enemies. Dungeons 2 also adds a new demon faction, who have their own unique units and dungeon layouts. There is some crossover between the two factions, a few rooms and traps are really only cosmetically different, but there is still enough variation there to provide a nice change of pace. Perhaps Dungeons 2 plays a little safe by ditching some of the more intriguing aspects of the previous game. I personally still think the idea of using overconfident adventurers as a kind of drainable resource is a fantastically twisted conceit that could have been fleshed out a bit further. But it's hard to criticise Realm Forge too much for that when the basic game is this enjoyable. While it is fairly simplistic, the Overland RTS game provides you with a real focus for expansion, and building your dungeon kingdom while simultaneously managing your menagerie of twisted minions is simple and fun. It still doesn't quite capture the delightfully sadistic sense of humour that marked out Dungeon Keeper in its prime, but Dungeons 2 is still a worthy tribute and well worth your time. It scores a very respectable 8 out of 10.
99% of the mission objectives had been completed. Wait, no, it's 100%. Excellent!